Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of the PETHS Alumni Network podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and today we're joined by Mr. Vick Gu. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for taking the time. And, it's actually pretty difficult to coordinate this. You're in Paris right now, which we'll touch on a lot later. So to give a bit of background, we met at Castlemore, and we went to high school together. You were on the golf team, and you did DECA as well, right?
Yeah, I did.
DECA, we'll touch on those high school experiences later. You graduated in 2020. You then went on to study international relations at the University of Toronto. And right now you're in Paris at SciencesPo, doing a master's of public policy. And you had to explain to me the program structure, which we'll touch on a little bit later. It's a dual master's degree with U of T. But like, as we touched on before, like what are some high school experiences for you that stand out?
Yeah, I think just what you said, like the golf team and DECA, those are two things that, that stand out to me the most, because I think golf was always my sport kind of growing up. I always went into it. I was very competitive. I even took some time away from PET to just do online e-learning, just to go in the States, be in Florida and train for it. So in a way that, like, during my high school years, that was kind of just like my life in the sense. So the golf team was just a natural like extension of that. Side note, they did spell my name wrong on the most valuable player award like 2 years out of the three. So a little bit annoyed by that, but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that, and then I think DECA was like kind of encapsulates what PET was to me at the time, where it's just like pure competition, pure ambition and drive. And it's like you're around people that are where winning is just like everything to them. And I think that really defined the way that my experience was in high school.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've always known you. You've been super competitive, super ambitious, motivated. You have that conviction in you, and I think that really helped you as well. But inside of school, what were some of your favorite classes that you had?
I'm not gonna lie, like I think that the law class with Mr. Logan in grade 12, I think that was definitely always the one class that stood out, because no matter where you were doing, with all the other classes that were like, getting to you, you're like worried about on your teach assist, looking every day at your marks. That was the one class where you could get in and just like turn off that side of your brain and just actually be like a person for once, and just be like, okay, like let's have some actual conversations about real things that matter. I remember we did a lot of like simulations, like we did the mock trial and stuff, and we just talked about like real issues in the world. And like I think that was the one time where you could actually feel like, all right, I'm being a person and talking about things that matter to me and what makes me happy and what's my passions, right? Like I think every other class, I think in a way, this is obviously a broad generalization, but in a way it was kind of just like a very drill sergeant mind, like, okay, we need to get this grade to be able to put this, on our application, whatever. But I think he was just a great teacher, and like also he understood the pressures of high school, so you just made this class anything but that. So I would go with that one.
Mm-hmm. I like how you talked about, real world issues and, more than just getting a grade, but actually like learning about things that are happening in the world. And, am I wrong to assume that's kind of why you decided to pursue like international relations? You want to look at real world issues. What were, the steps you took to decide that that was what you wanted to study?
Yeah, like I think for me, like coming out of high school, like yeah, I think in a way it was a little bit naive in the sense that I was like, okay, like I just want to do something that like matters, that does something that like where you can look back on your life and be like, okay, like I actually talked about things that were bigger than just myself, and just bigger than making money and profit, these kind of things, right? So, but in a way I was like obviously pretty naive about that. Like, you don't in 4 years in classes in international relations all of a sudden become Aristotle or Socrates. You can't just start writing books, but in a way that you do in a way start thinking about things in a more broader context. But it really did teach you a lot about things that are things that are seem so simple but are not, especially classes in like political economy and like just even the basic economics of the classes in economics were like really informative for that part. So I think in a way, yes, but not necessarily the way that I would have originally imagined it.
Mm-hmm. So, what I kind of gather from that is, you wanted to go to somewhere that has, a like, good education system, but, you ended up going to U of T, which I would assume has a very, strong like political sense, and they have a strong standing within like Canada as a whole.
Mhm.
Was that always your first choice, and were there other schools that you applied to?
Yeah. So I think I applied to McGill, UBC, Western. I think for me, like it just my personalities, I'm definitely like a big city kind of person. So the experience that I wanted was always going to be wanted to be in a big city, not necessarily like a university town. I felt like that just wasn't like my kind of thing. Like I wanted to be have always have additional options, and have the backdrop of a big city behind just to be able to feel that experience for when the first time you leave home kind of thing. But Toronto, I think Toronto for me is just it wasn't necessarily always my first choice. Like I think I was much more considering BC and McGill, but then like I think towards the end of it, I think I what I realized is that um, I think something in me just like wasn't ready to like fully move on and go. I felt like because of COVID and all that experiences and growing up in Markham, like it might be close to Toronto, but it's nothing like what Toronto actually is when you actually experience 4 years of it. So I think that part of me just kind of said I just still need some time to to stay back and stay and try something new, but also still have the comfort of home in case that is. I think some people made that choice as well. I think in my year, and then other people took that leap of faith and decided to go out of the province, which is, I think it's worked out for everybody that I've talked to so far from my year. But yeah, I think that was it just strictly came down to a gut feeling.
Yeah. So, now you've, spread your wings and gone to Paris, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But, last
Yeah.
question about the application process. What was the
Yeah.
application process to get into such a program?
Yeah, I think for U of T was that like these programs aren't necessarily like the most difficult in terms of just being able to get in. Like the process itself was you just submit with all your grades on OUEC. So for me, I was lucky enough to have good grades going into grade 12, so I was able to get an offer. But yeah, I think I didn't really have to do anything special. I know a lot of other people had to do like essays and stuff like that. And I'm not gonna lie, I really didn't have to do that. The hardest part was actually when you got in. That's when and keeping your status and being able to get into international relations, which starts in second year. That was actually more of the hard part.
Hmm. So when you talk about that degree of difficulty, like what about it was difficult and how did you overcome, these difficulties?
Yeah, sure. So the way it worked at U of T was obviously you get into first year, you're just in general arts and science. And essentially you have to take classes that you know that are going to be the prerequisites for your second year major declaration. So for me, international relations, you got to take first your basic, first micro and macro standard econ classes, and then you have to take a couple classes in political science and things like that. And you have to get like a minimum of like 80 in all these classes, which is actually pretty high considering class averages at U of T are like usually hanging around 60%. Um, so I can't lie. After my first midterm in econ, I got like a 78. I was like, whoa, I was like panicking. I was like, I need to like step this up a little bit because there's, I think, 800 people like apply to international relations every year and they only take about 90. So, and this is of people that have already been accepted into U of T. So I think I can't lie. It is competitive in that sense. I think that U of T very much embraces the pet mentality of like the work hard, put your head down and compete kind of thing, which to me at the time, Pet did help in that experience where I was like, okay, I already understand this like kind of mentality. So I'm like just gonna put my head down and work, get the job done.
So earlier we talked about learning through these experiences and learning real world applications. On the more
Yeah.
like practical side, within yourself, what are some of the like tips that you would give someone that is like kind of struggling with that pressure in first year, for example?
Yeah, I think looking back on it, like after the first year, I was like, okay, cool. I got into this program. Now what? And now you set yourself up for the next 3 years to take classes in these programs, and you're really like you're reflecting to yourself. Now I think back on it, like, was it worth it? Yeah, 100%. Like the work that you put in, but like did it need to be as hard as I made it out to be myself? No, I don't think so. Like, I think that I made it seem like to me, it was kind of like everything to get into this program. I like had zero backup. I didn't even think about what other programs, like they recommend that you apply to like 3 programs in case. No, I just applied to one. And like, I honestly like if I didn't get it, I would have been really screwed. But like, that's how much pressure I put on myself. I guess I just would say that it really isn't as deep as you make it out to be. Like, yeah, like it would have sucked if I didn't get into that program because it would have been it's a really good program in terms of the professors and the access to resources that you get. But I think that um U of T itself is also just such a large learning branch that I wish I focused more on just the outside, like extracurriculars, clubs, and these things like that are equally just as enriching, that I never truly got the opportunity to, and for a multitude of reasons. You know, you had COVID. I also played varsity golf U of T. Now I just chose to do other things, but looking back on it, didn't need to be as stressful as I made first year out to be. So I guess I would just kind of I would just say, like, you know, just accept the result and just go with the journey. You know, that's exactly what that's all it is. It's not as deep as you make it out to be.
So apart from, the catastrophizing that you talked about, not making it as deep as, not
Yeah.
panicking as soon as like one thing goes wrong, is there any other learning that you're taking with you from your undergrad to your master's degree?
Yeah, I think the biggest part is that, it just sounds cliche again, and it just feels like I'm repeating myself, but it's so true. Like, every day when I think about it, like, it just becomes more and more silly the way that I used to think about grades, and I used to think about academics, you know, that kind of like the need for validation in that sense, because I know I can speak to the audience in this kind of sense, because I know at Pat, like, at least in my year, you know, you can probably sense this too. The amount of academic validation that was needed by everybody was just like, it's utterly ridiculous now that I look back on it. You know, there was absolutely no need for that. Like, I remember feeling bad because I got like a 90 on like a test, and like everybody else got like a 95, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, that's really dumb. But like, I think that that's really just what I want to stress, because, you know, you do your master's now, and then you realize that really didn't mean anything. It's really just about the learning that you do. More of it comes outside of the classroom. The networking, talking to people about issues they care about, you know, ask, you know, if there's skills that you don't know, you learn by networking, you know, like, you learn by observing other people. Right. And these are the things that, for me, that I realized very quickly, is that you can learn so much more outside the classroom than you can in the classroom. And what really matters is you just use the classroom as leverage to get the information and the connections with people outside the classroom. Like, you meet people in a class, all of a sudden the things that you talk about outside the class are actually more important than, oh, what was the homework, or like, what did you write on this essay? It's more like, okay, like, what kind of clubs do you want to join? What kind of skills do we need to do for this internship? You know, who should we reach out to? These are the things that I learned that probably are more important than any of my assignments, because I don't think I can remember what I wrote on any of them, but I can remember what the people I talked to in each class, and, you know, what came about from that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Even, navigating my own school journey has been, a lot of outside of classroom things. And kind of like a common theme on this podcast is we have a lot of high level athletes. And, for high level athlete like yourself, playing golf, I know golf is one of the most frustrating sports ever to play. But at the same time, I think it teaches a great lesson that, taking one shot and missing that one shot, you can still have a great round, right?
Yeah.
What are some other things that, competing at a high level in golf has taught you about, life in general or school specifically?
Yeah. Really, just never get too high, never get too low. That's what they preach to you in golf from day one. You know, golf is one of those rare sports. You know, in baseball, like any other professional sport, you can't really dunk a basketball like a professional. You can't really hit 100-mile fastball. But in golf, you can hit a shot just like a professional, being a complete amateur. You know, you can shoot 120, but you can drain a 30-foot putt just the same way a pro does. That's the kind of highs that golf can get you. But it also teaches you the fact that, you know, as high as you are there, you can also be just as low. You can miss the ball completely on the next one. So it's one of those things where you just have to manage your emotions. And it's the exact same thing with, you know, your academics. You have to you have to manage that all the time. Everything is about balance. You can't sway too much towards academics. Same thing, you can't sway too much towards social life, you know, because, yeah, the dangers that can get you. I mean, I don't have to explain that, but I think from playing golf, yeah, it really just teaches you, you know, it's great to succeed, and it sucks to fail, but in between that, it's about consistency. It's about how many times you can get up after you fail. It's about how many times you can be better after each success. You know, that's the kind of the mentality that I have to take with me. You know, at every step, you know, I'm proud of myself for what I accomplished. I can look back on it, and then looking forward, you ask yourself, how can you be better?
Right. I totally agree with the, the learning point at the end. That really resonates with me, this the constant learning. And I like how you mentioned, the highs and the lows. So we talked about, some of the things you wish you did differently in university, but what were some of the highs for you in your undergrad?
Yeah, I think being a varsity athlete, I think that experience is both, from a sport perspective and a social perspective, something that was really cool to be a part of. You're part of the varsity community. These kind of athletes. We have a joke at UFT. We have like a not a joke, but a thing at UFT where everyone has these like backpacks. So like we walk past a stranger, but we know that they're an athlete, so we like wait for them. We wait 3 seconds, and we both turn around. We try to see what team they're on. So it's one of those things where it's just like little things like that that just kind of resonate and like build that community around you. I've met some of my best friends, people I'm very close with now, from the varsity community, and they're from very different teams. So that just shows the way that it can bring people together. And I think that they also share in the common identity of having to balance, what you do, the sport that you enjoy versus the rigors of UFT. So I think that was definitely a high point. And at the same time too, I would say that in my I think the winter of my second year, so basically the second semester after COVID, I joined a fraternity, which is like a very taboo kind of thing in this day and age. And I won't get too much into the specifics, but I think that generally it's really just about taking a risk, like taking something that not necessarily you would imagine yourself being able to do, and then just going for it. So I think I'm going to say that in just the concept of me taking a risk itself was already a pretty good highlight for me.
And talking about taking risks, we talked a little bit offline. You're in Paris right now. You
Yeah.
talked about the dual master's degree that you're doing. And I
Yeah.
have to assume that was probably one of the highlights, probably like getting into a program you really wanted to get into and being able to travel across the world. And we talked a little bit. You said that you only found out about the program 2 weeks before you had to
Mhm.
apply. Can you
Yeah.
tell us like when you decided you wanted to pursue further education and kind of how that process played out?
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of story goes back. So I applied, I think first week of December last year, this or 2023. But the story of itself kind of goes back a lot longer. So like I think during September, during the early summer, or just before school started in my fourth year, I always knew that like I wanted to throw my hat into the ring for something different, try something different. I realized that 4 years of Toronto, was an unbelievable experience just from a social and like an academic standpoint. I felt like I was challenged in a lot of ways, but the next step in my life would be to challenge myself outside of that realm. It's easy to be comfortable in one spot. Toronto is such a good city, such an international, multicultural city, so you feel like you always vibe. But I wanted to be somewhere where I wasn't necessarily going to be comfortable from day one, and I have to have that experience. I think that was really aided by the people I met at UFT too. My best friends are from the UK. One person's from Texas, another person's from Dubai. So like these people, they had to do the exact same thing first year, except they had it harder for them because they came during a COVID time where it was really hard to meet people already. So I think that watching them and seeing how on that end of their experience made me want to also pursue that. And I was joking with them. I was like, okay, now it's my turn to go be in your shoes for a year. So that's kind of like what pushed me to do it. So in the summer, there was a program actually that would have offered a master's degree in China. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll try that because, being born here, don't really have much of the Chinese culture. So I put my name in the hat for that, and didn't get in. So I was like, a little disappointed, but at the same time expected. It was a very difficult program to get into. But on the backs of that, once I was talking to my professor about master's programs because I knew that I wanted to keep my education going because I felt like there was so much more I had to learn. He was like, oh, like he just happens to be the director of all these Monk dual degree programs. And he's like, how it works is each program, so a master's of global affairs at UFT is typically a 2-year program with an internship in the summer, and same as the one in Paris that I'm doing right now. But they have collaborative partnership where you can do both degrees and you can do 1 year at each school and get both degrees. So I'm like, wow, that's really cool, with an internship in the summer in between. And you have the ability to make connections in both Toronto and Paris. For Paris, like, I mean, for me, it was such an easy option. I mean, like the appeal of, French being, Canada being a Francophone country, the appeal of having that knowledge, and also, of course, Paris is like the crown jewel of Europe as well, to be able to understand European perspectives, that just like goes into everything that I wanted. So from there, when he told me about it, I mean, I kind of, when did I decide? I kind of decided in that moment then there. I was like, I'm going to do it. And then I applied. And then luckily, I think I had a really good third year, second semester. It was like really good grades. And then I was able to get an early offer, I think just 3 weeks. I think this time, to be honest, a year ago is when I got my offer. So it was really fortunate that I had that conversation with my professor, and it's led me here.
Right. Was the one in China that you applied for, was that also through U of T? I'm just wondering, like, did you look outside of U of T, or did you always know you're going back?
I did. I no, the one in China was not through U of T. It was, but like U of T does send a lot of like stuff about master's program. I wanted to do master's programs, so I think U of T, there's like a board for international relations, because a lot of people do masters from that. So they, on the board, they were posting a bunch of like master's programs, and it just came up on one of them, but it wasn't affiliated with U of T. So yeah, I had no idea. I didn't know if I was going to go back to U of T at all. I was looking at other places, looking at Ottawa, looking at Carleton, because they have really good Masters of Global Affairs or International Affairs programs. But I think it's just the opportunity came up at U of T for this. So.
Mm-hmm. So right now you're studying public policy with a focus on economics. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then at Toronto, you're studying global affairs. Is the difference kind of like the scope? Like, I assume public policy is more so within the country, and then global affairs is international?
I think it kind of has more to do with the skill set. So right now it's a master's of public policy, but it's in economic public policy. So everything we do is focused on is I think a lot more technical, is focused on the technical elements. We do like policy analysis, we do a ton of economics, and then we do like risk evaluation. We like do finance and stuff like that, but all from a policy standpoint. Like if you're a policymaker, if you're a regulator, these are the things you need to know, kind of thing. So it's very more into the nitty gritty of the technical. And I think that the way that I read this is, back in Toronto, the Masters of Global Affairs is a lot more consulting based. So it's more case studies. It's a lot more about help. It's about like mock presentations, these kind of things, these kind of skills. So it's a very diverse skill set. One is a more technical background in, the various issues in public affairs these days, from an economic standpoint. And the other one is a lot more of a kind of a practical simulation based on the knowledge that you've acquired.
Right. I think it's a really interesting time to be studying that, with all the geopolitical stuff, the economic stuff, which we won't touch on today, but we could talk about that for hours. With this big toolkit that you're developing through all this training that you have, what are your plans like in terms of, jobs? Like, it seems like you could work in a variety of different sectors. What do you see for yourself?
Yeah. So kind of like right now, our recruitment process for the internship is kind of well underway. We're kind of talking to a lot of different people, different organizations. So there's always the public versus the private debate when you study something kind of like this. In the private sector, there's always going to be a demand for government consulting, people who understand you. They want people who understand government, and to be able to interact with them on behalf of clients. There's always going to be that element. And then you can also just pursue straight up, you can leverage your finance element of it too, to pursue things like ESG, that kind of consulting. Or there's always going to be the public element if to work in government. For me, like, I've developed an interest in international trade. So I think for me, that was going to be an area that I'm focusing on for my internships. Like, I'm trying to apply towards the trade branch of a lot of various government organizations. So that's definitely something on my radar. But yeah, I think those are the two main avenues that you can kind of go from this program. It's either, public policy, you're a hard public policy kind of public servant in government, or you kind of go the private route and you kind of use your knowledge and leverage that more in a consulting manner for clients.
Mm-hmm. So you talked a little bit about ESG, and I saw you worked at HSBC doing ESG analysis. Can you tell me what that experience was like?
Yeah, it's been really cool. So we're wrapping up in 2 weeks time our tenure, but it's been a really cool experience. I mean, like HSBC is one of the like the top firms in Europe, and obviously Europe itself, it has some of the highest standards in the world when it comes to just about anything, but especially financial sustainability. Everything now we have the SFDR, so the Sustainable Financial Disclosure Requirements. So that everything has to be publicized in terms of what kind of efforts are we doing for ES, the G element of it. So I think that to have an opportunity to do it in Europe and to do it in an environment where it's already so tightly regulated, it's been really good for me, because if I want to go back to North America, where the regulations are much looser, you can leverage that experience to understand what's it going to take to increase to meet certain reporting criteria, or what is considered financial, the materiality versus the single versus the double materiality debate, things like that. But I think the European perspective is what I like to focus on. Like I think it's one thing to do ESG anywhere, but like to do it especially in Europe, where it's essentially this is where they take this the most seriously in the world. I think it's been a really good experience, and just getting to work with my colleagues as well. They're from Germany, they're from Amsterdam, they're from all over these other countries, but just seeing how seriously they take this issue, it's been really eye-opening. Because I'm not gonna lie, like I think even me back at home, like I really never paid much attention to this issue of like, oh, sustainability, like it just feels like something you say for the sake of saying. But no, here like they take it like actually really seriously, and you can see the impacts of the work that we do.
Right. I think I can, kind of see the difference as well. They have a stronger focus on those sort of classes. Even at Western and at Ivy, for example, we had corporations and society, which talked a lot about sustainability, for example, and even like
Yeah.
there's a lot of green bonds and sustainability linked financing, which I worked with in the summer. But you talked a lot about the difference between European culture and North American culture. Was there an initial culture shock for you when you got to Paris?
Yeah, 100%. The best way to describe it, though, they like to take their time, and you have to just accept it. I think there's no Amazon one day delivery here, the way that we have it back home. But I think that in a way, it's as much as it was a shock. Now I'm starting to appreciate it a lot more now that I've settled in. I think the ability to just kind of take everything, very tranquilo, very slow, just like kind of enjoy life the way it is. You on Sundays, everything's closed. You just walk through the park. You grab your coffee. You hang out with friends, hang out with family. Just take it very easy. And it really sets you up well for the rest of the week when you actually have to put in work, because you actually got some rest on a day. And I think that it's a very eye-opening experience for that kind of culture, because Toronto, in my whole life, I've just been so accustomed to going fast, fast, fast. Everything is like, okay, 10 times speed. How do I get these assignments done now? How do I stay up? I'll stay up till 6 in the morning if I have to, but now it's like, no, it's like, okay, now everything is like, no, no, no. We spread it out. We take it slow, one task at a time, take a break if you have to. And it's like, it's very much accepted here. And it's like, it's not just something people do. It's something you have to get used to be able to make it here.
And then another thing is like, what about the food for you? That I know that's a huge part of your culture. How are you enjoying the French food?
You know what? Like authentic French food is like absolutely. It's unbelievable. It's like really good, and they really don't waste any food. So they always get bread at like the table when you go to a restaurant, right? And all their food, they like love their sauce. Like some cultures are like very spice driven, but no, like the French, I think they're very like sauce driven, because it's just like you give you a normal piece of chicken, or like they do normal beef, like beef bourguignon. It's just like literally just regular beef, but it's like the stew sauce that it's like on top of it that makes it just unbelievable. And then you have to use the bread afterwards to like wipe it and wipe the sauce, and like you leave nothing left on the plate. But the food's been amazing. I think that's the one thing too, is just the standard of food here is so much higher. Everything, like the worst kind of food you can find here is arguably almost as good as the best kind of food you can find back home. Like I've never seen like a pack of instant noodles like be under like 60% salt level, and I get here and like the pack's like 23%. I'm like, wow, like you're telling me I can have 3 of these and still be okay. Like back at home you have one, and like you're on heart attack watch. So I think the standard of food has been good, and it's like reflected too in my health. I haven't really been sick. Like back at home, I think I would have been sick at least 2 times, which is, just as unfortunate with the seasoning. But like here, I'm like lucky, like I haven't been sick at all with the food, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So you mentioned like the eating etiquette. How has the learning curve kind of been with etiquettes and like language barriers? Has it been like a quick adjustment? How has that been for you?
I've been lucky because here, like I joined the handball team. It's a sport that you can learn very quickly, especially since us athletes, if we play a couple sports growing up, you just kind of already have the athletic motions down. So it's pretty cool. Everybody on the team is like very, very French. So you kind of just like when you get thrown, this is what I was talking about. When you get thrown into the environment and you just have to like sink or swim, it really like builds your ability. And that's what it's been for me. It's just like you learn very quickly. In terms of etiquette, I don't think there's really that much that's different, just like how they eat at the table per se. Yeah, but like the French itself, that's just been like, yeah, it's all through socialization.
And then we talked a little bit offline. You just came back from your trip to China, which I'm sure
Yeah.
is worlds apart from what it's like in Paris. And Paris being
Yep.
at the hub of Europe. Do you have any like quick travel plans? I know you can get just about anywhere from Paris.
Yeah, no, that's been the really great thing of I mean, there's so many great things about Europe, but that's another one too. You can just jump on a bus and be in a new country in, 3 hours. You can jump on a plane. Well, I'm actually going to London on Thursday, or Manchester on Thursday, to go watch Manchester United, my dream team. So have to go to the theater of dreams. So it's nice. I'll just jump on a flight. It's an hour, but like it's just, there's so much flexibility. Like for me, a lot of my plans come like, oh, like I know I anticipate 2 weeks in advance that I'm going to have like a free weekend. So I kind of use that opportunity to, maybe go to a neighboring country or see something, do like a day trip to a different part of France, just something cool for that. I also have to remind myself that, I'm in Paris, like that kind of experience is like not something that a lot of people can get. So the opportunity, you have to take every opportunity you get, even if you're in school, you might have to suffer a little bit more when you get back. You might have a little bit of an unconventionally late night, which by their standards is like, 1 a.m. But you have to do it.
Yeah, I think you're gonna miss, that ability to just jump on the Eurostar, head anywhere you
Yeah.
want. And you mentioned Manchester United, and I remember you're a huge Leafs fan as well, right?
Yeah.
If you had to pick one of them, to win their respective championship this year, who would it be?
Well, I mean, United are not going to win the championship at all. They're like 14th right now on the table. So, I mean, I would take my Leafs all day on that one. I think that, we've had enough pain. We've had enough suffering and ridicule from Canadians fans and just any other, hockey fan for as long as I've been born. So, I would love to see the Leafs come back to a Leafs Cup victory.
We're gonna have to keep our fingers crossed for that one. I'm not putting any money on it. Go Bruins, go Bruins, go.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up, looking ahead, we've talked a lot about the past, the present. Looking ahead to the
Mhm.
future, do you have any future aspirations that we can look forward to seeing from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for me, my motto is just like kind of everything is on the table at this point. When you have an experience like this, it really opens up your toolkit and the way that you see the world. It's like someone who drank water their whole life, and all of a sudden they're introduced to soda, and all of a sudden, they might not like water the same way they liked it before. So it's just that kind of idea where everything's on the table. I think that the good part about studying in France is that it does give you the opportunity to come here and like work here after if you would like. I think they're quite good with that if you have a degree from a French institution, so that's good. Obviously going to U of T gives you the option of applying to London, or I mean the UK in general, on the HPI visa, so it definitely opens up opportunities, and I intend to explore every single one of them, just because if you get the opportunity, you have to take them. This is the kind of life that you only live once, and you have to just try everything. So we'll see. Everything's on the table at this point. But all I know is that I'm gonna explore everything and leave no stone unturned before I find what I want to do, I guess.
Yeah, great piece of advice. And would that be kind of something similar to what you would have told maybe like your 16 or 18-year-old self?
Definitely not. Like I
Yeah.
think that like my view was much more like narrow back then. I think that back then you can only see what was in front of you, and I was only so focused on just like step by step climbing the ladder of like school, work, money, and then like retirement, that kind of thing. Like I think that was so focused on that kind of ladder that I just like couldn't really see the big picture of like, why do we even do this? What's the purpose of finding the job? What's the purpose of finding money? It's all for, to maximize the utility of this life that we get, right? So I think that now that I think it's not necessarily just because of this experience, but it helps in the sense that you're like, okay, there's a greater purpose to this, and you want to find that. So that's what I'm going with.
Okay, really appreciate all your time, your insights, your
Yeah.
perspectives, all super great, and I like the leave no stone unturned.
Yeah.
So you said everything is on the table. Final question for you: if you could nominate a number of PET grads, any number of PET grads, to be on this
Yeah.
podcast, who would they be?
Let me think. Trying to think of some different perspectives to bring. I think that I think Serena would have some pretty good perspectives to bring. I think that when I was talking about someone who like decided to leave the province, I think it worked out really well for her. I think she's happy, and I think that that could be a good one to get. I think that she could have some really interesting experience about that kind of decision because like I said, a lot of people have to make that decision at the end of high school. Do you want to stay kind of close to home, or do you want to go try to do something abroad and like take that leap of faith, I guess. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been a great perspective that you've brought. Being able to see the benefits of not even staying at home, because like you said, Markham's a lot different from Toronto, but having that Toronto
Yeah.
experience, having that Paris experience, being able to travel all around Europe, I think it's something super important. The cross-cultural experience, because I think we live in a world that's so interconnected. Everyone kind of needs that, especially
Yeah.
being from PET. Everyone, it's like debatable how you see the culture there. But
Exactly.
yeah, super insightful. So thank you so much for your time. Um, Learned a lot today. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and we'll see everyone next week. See you later.